Support Pro Play Games on Patreon.
What is up, guys? We're live here with our first place release tournament winning promo card Imperial Thunder Dragon Seagworm. We got this for finishing first at the release tournament. We played the Elephant Control deck, a red variation of it. So we're going to go into exactly what we played here. We played 3 Bullet Rays, which is a low-cost white spirit. Allows you to just like not die in the beginning of the game, and it's just a body to block, and for a 2-core investment, 5k is pretty nifty. It kind of gets out of the range of like the smaller like weenie removal that's out there that kills like 3ks and stuff. Then you got Pegasione, which is pretty good. He allows you to block while rested, but only against smaller spirits, like spirits with like 2 or fewer cores on them, as long as he has a soul core. So this guy just does a good job of getting you out of the early game so that you can live to your late game and actually win the game. He also has armor red and purple, so he doesn't get removed very easily. Speaking of armor, we have another armor dude here that we play, the Snowflakin. This guy's really good, especially against like the red and purple decks, because his when blocking ability at level 2 allows you to put back spirits with cores or confront keywords back into your opponent's hand. So it actually doesn't even go into the combat. It just like puts it back before it even like gets dealt damage. So that's why it's extremely powerful. Also, it's a 6k threshold, which is actually pretty big in order to just like block other things that are not, you know, the curse and confront cards. Then we played 3 Ice Maid Fulla. With Fulla, she's really good because purple is a deck that is pretty rampant and focuses on killing you by removing cores from your spirits. So this allows you to not die by that ability or not get targeted by that ability. It makes her immune, and then it makes her any other one of your spirits that you wanna select or attach the soul core to it. And kind of just like I said, once you get to that like board, that unbreakable board, you do this with your enterprise, and it almost becomes like a lock that's unbreakable. So this is super important for more of like when you start establishing your lock late game, but it's also pretty good against aggro decks because it's a body with, you know, power that you can use to like block. So it's not always dead. Pretty nice card to have, honestly. And then this guy kind of mixed up. And then we have a little bit more of our. I'm still gonna go on the early game here. So our second color was red. So second color red allows us to splash for cards like this Flamefish. Very good also in the early game to kind of make sure that you just don't outright die. Kills a lot of spirits, like I was talking about. That 4k DP threshold or BP threshold is really powerful to be able to like hit. So this is going to be able to do that. It could also scale into a 4k. So there's a world where you put like, you make this guy into a 4k, you block with him, suicide him, he dies into their 4k or whatever, and then you kill another 4k. That's obviously like Fantasyland, but it does allow you to do that. Also can do the same thing with 3ks and 1ks and stuff like that. So this card's just overall very good, and even if it doesn't like really kill anything, it does the job of like holding the aggression off your opponent, and then you end up like cost reducing all your other like red spells. Then we played the Dino Man. Dino Man was pretty MVP, honestly. This guy is just there as like a 1-costed 6k power dude, essentially. So you can just see him as like an iron wall that can just sit there. He can soak attacks, and he can also attack himself if you really wanted to, because he's just 6k. He's just massive, honestly. So you can do a lot with this guy, and if he stays on board and doesn't do anything, worst case, like I said, it's just going to become like just a wall, you know, or a cost reduction tool for your opponent. And then we get into like the larger spirits here. This is how like you win the game. So once you survive a little bit of the early game, then you start playing into this like mid to late game strategy, which involves, this is a very key piece because this is how you're going to win the game. Typically this deck doesn't like win by attacking. Sometimes it's just by like stalling, and then once you land this guy, then it's a clock, because every end of turn on your opponent's turn, if they've ceased to do damage to you, which is going to be very hard for them to do damage, it's going to deal 1 damage to you at the end phase. So very powerful card, and you want to keep these you know, so that when you stabilize, you can play them and really just run away with the game. This is one of those cards that kind of like helps you get there in the deck. So the Newman Guard, the Elephant, which is what this deck is kind of like centered around. It's Elephant control. You're gonna see a lot of versions of this deck that just play this, and then like other colors, maybe like purple, red, yellow, whatever. Some of them being like mono white, essentially. But the thing that makes this card so powerful is that it does have the ability to ramp you 3 cores and draw you 3 cards on destruction. So you want to get this guy destroyed as fast as possible. Against purple, they kill him really easily because they have the Baculus combo that kind of just like board wipes you. And against other decks, sometimes maybe it might be a little bit harder, but regardless, like this guy's just a giant wall. So it's either a wall that's eating one of their dudes every time by you blocking, or it just dies and then just does the thing, right? And then we have just to round it out, we have triple armored dragon ship Enterprise. Now this guy, extremely powerful because he allows you to essentially make that unbreakable board untouchable now. So by activating this guy's effect, he essentially gives all your things armor, red, purple, white. So that includes everything that you play. It doesn't even specify white spirits, so technically it can give like your flame fishes and all your other like red spells or whatever immunity. But the main goal of this guy is to have him protect your everything else. So then now you have double blocker, then you have things like the elk that now can't be targeted outside of the combat either. And this is just a big key piece to like winning the actual game. Then we have, for our Nexuses, we only play a few. We play 1 white and 2 red ones. We play a Fortress Metropolis, Newman City, and then 2 Volcanic Island, Canyon, sorry. I always call it Island. So this card lets you cycle and find your absolute ice shields, because you need ice shields to like win, survive against other decks. Just typically the person that resolves the most ice shields, I think just wins the game for the most part. So this is a very key piece in like you being able to get there. And then the Fortress Metropolis Newman City is really good as well because it acts as like a mana rock essentially, which makes all your machine beasts just cost less. So now instead of cost reduction, sometimes that's like the hardest thing to get to like a position where you're like playing your white bombs for cheaper. This card allows you to play them for much cheaper, so that's why it provides a lot of value, but it's also redundant to have more than 1 copy on board, so that's why we only play 1, because we will eventually see it down the stretch with all the draw power that we have in this deck, and then it'll kind of just alleviate you using your mana to, get there. So, then we play 4 Star Blessed Draw. This card is your Powder Greed. This card draws you 2 cards and potentially draws you 4 cards. You just set this card against most decks, so like purple, yellow, things like that. You set this, and then once they play their spirit and they have a win summon effect, then you go ahead and trigger this for free, draw 2, and then you can pay the additional cost to draw another 2. So in this deck, because we do play like a lot of other red cards like the Flamefish, the Dino Man, the Volcanic Canyon, those are cards that reduce that give you cost reduction. So there's a very likely world where you go and you resolve this by paying 2 mana or 2 cores and you draw 4 cards. I mean, that happens pretty easily in this deck specifically because we have such a heavy red splash. Then we play 4 Absolute Ice Shield. Absolute Ice Shield is just absolutely necessary, right? Funny enough, I didn't trigger this card at all day. Suppression just carried the bulk of the work, and I actually didn't even see Ice Shields a lot for the majority of the day anyways. But when this card goes off, it goes off. There's a funny, there's a ruling between Elk and Absolute Ice Shield that because the Absolute Ice Shield recovers the life that you lost, Elk looks at your starting life at the beginning of the turn and ending life at the end of your opponent's turn. And then if those numbers are the same, so if you started the turn at 3 and you ended the turn at 3, no matter what happened in between, you lost 3 life, then gained 3 life, whatever, Elk will still trigger. So because of that interaction, this makes, Elk a little bit more powerful, but it keeps Absolute Ice Shield as powerful and as needed as you would in any other type of deck. Any deck that you see competitively will be playing this card because it just shuts off the turn and allows you to continue playing on your turn. So very powerful card, and because we are a white deck, we get the cost reduction here. So not huge, but it does let you cast that for 3 instead of 4, which does sometimes affect your mana. To go along with the spells, we play the Suppression card. So Suppression's extremely powerful because it acts as like your additional copies of Ice Shield, essentially. It's just a card that says, you cannot attack me for the rest of the turn because I have, essentially a magnet on my, my card, my battle card. So even though it's tapped and not able to block anymore, the Suppression will allow it to now continue blocking. And then this is another interaction which becomes quite silly with the Elk card, the Fan Attack Elk. Fan Attack Elk says when the spirit blocks, it can't be destroyed, removed, cores, yada yada. Essentially indestructible, right? So Elk plus Suppression allows you to just essentially stop your opponent's turn, because once you trigger that block and it's immune for the turn, now you Suppression and their opponent has to essentially magnet all their attacks into the Elk, and the Elk doesn't matter what BP it's at, doesn't matter anything, because he's pretty much immune, he's indestructible, and Suppression's essentially just cutting off their entire battle phase. So because this is an interaction, another reason why we're maxing out on Elk, and another reason why we want to max out on Suppression. Suppression's also good without that interaction. Obviously, you're not always going to be able to build up Elk plus Suppression, but situations like Dino Man plus Suppression, or Flamefish or Pegasione or whatever with Suppression, the ability to play this card in the first flash window before you actually go into blocks is actually what makes this card much more powerful than normal, because now it's taking an attack from your opponent and taking usually a creature from your opponent. That spirit is now going to get outmatched in battle with your rested spirit, because you're playing this before blocks, giving your spirit the ability to block, then blocking with your spirit. So they're always usually losing a spirit in that whole interaction. To round out the spells, almost done. We played some 5-drop spells. Dream Bomb. This card is also pretty ridiculous. This card is actually pretty nice as a burst at the beginning of the game, because it activates off of when you lose life. So that's inevitable at the beginning stage of the game. There's gonna be a time where, like, when the game goes on and you're just like, you don't want to lose any type of life because you're at 2, for example, and that's when you're setting the ice shields and things like that. But with the Dream Bomb, it becomes much more powerful at the beginning, especially when they land an early Nexus and they land an early boss monster. You're able to 2-for-1 them, because not only will you be able to bounce back a spirit off of the burst, but if you pay the mana, you can actually put back, off the burst you're going to put back a Nexus, but off the main effect you're going to be able to bounce back the spirit. So you'll kind of 2-for-1 your opponent and take them off tempo, make them waste their entire next turn playing a Nexus, replaying the Nexus or the spirit. And it's honestly one of the few pieces of interaction that you have in the combat phase to kind of not destroy. It's non-destruction removal in a way, because it essentially just, for example, against Elk, the only way that you can deal with it is boom. But because it is white, Enterprise is something that's going to be able to counter this play, so you got to be very careful with this. And then finally, we played 2 Burning Forces. Burning Force is just, Burning Force is Burning Force, very good. We sided the 3rd. It's very good because it gets 2-for-1 your opponent on your turn. If they have small weenies on board, you just play the Burning Force, you kill 2 things. But then the flash effect is that you can, the flash you could do 2-for-1 on either player's turn. The main effect is to kill a Nexus. So if you wanted to kill a Nexus, you have to do it on your turn, but the killing 2 spirits can be done on either turn. And we only played 2, but like I said, we sided the 3rd. This card is a lot better in this version of the deck because you can actually get the double cost reduction in order to kill 2 things. But typically in other decks that are just splashing for Burning Force is a little heavier, and it does cost a full 5. But yeah, that pretty much does it, guys. That is the release winning deck, and a version of a deck that we actually took to the Las Vegas Open, which was a little bit more greedy and a lot more top heavy, which was a little bit less favorable against aggro decks. But I think when you play something a little bit more low to the ground like this, you're able to get a better aggro matchup, and I think you're still able to fight against those mid-rangey red decks and still have a really good time. So that's pretty much it, guys. Thank you guys again for checking it out. If you'd like to see more content like this, make sure you guys check out our Patreon right up here, where you're going to get content for Battle Spirits, Dragon Ball Super, One Piece, and Digimon. You're going to get all the Bandai games. So thank you guys again for your support. Until next time.